Okay, gonna do a little different format tonight. Not that we've had a format. We're sort of, what do you call it? Initial growing pains, shall we say. Anyway, so I asked AI to come up with a list of questions that would be broad based, and I could answer these questions. I asked it for a wide range of subjects, a broad base, and not just film, because I didn't want this to be a film centric type of show anyway. If anything, that I wanted it to cover all forms of culture, cuisine, arts, all of that, and even current events. Let's go through some of the questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. I think some of them are sort of on the political side, so I'll have to see how I handle those. And you know, let's take a look at number one. How do you interpret the rise of TikTok as a cultural force? Is it democratizing art or cheapening it? Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's neither. I always thought that art should be free. It's one of the few things that it's free in the hands of anybody willing to do it. Anybody can take a twig, dip it in a little some ink, take a little brush. They have canvas. You can get canvas from burlap bags, whatever. I always thought that art was accessible of the many different forms of expression. It doesn't cost anything. So the fact that TikTok, anyone can be a TikToker and to that extension, a YouTuber, I think it's great. I think specifically when it comes to some of these platforms like TikTok and Instagram, what's actually interesting is that in the process of actually posting your selfies and these videos and recording them, you're actually learning the basics of film editing or editing, let's say, content. In other words, you're aware of the physicality of what you're shooting. You're figuring out the juxtaposition of these clips and putting it back and forth. And in doing so, you're also promoting yourself. You're getting some gratification. I believe maybe the gratification is too, it's too forthcoming too soon. It's nothing to work towards. Like you literally can, shoot something right now, and a minute later, it's up on TikTok. Your life story, whatever. Uh, but I don't think it's cheapening it. If by cheapening it they mean, I don't know who's asking these questions. Somebody up there. If by cheapening it means that it's far spread in the hands of the masses, I'm not against that, because don't forget, a lot of countries, most people, they were saying, like, I don't know what percentage, like a third of the world doesn't have a toilet, but they have a phone. They have a smartphone. So to them, that's their only form of expression, because a lot of these countries, getting, let's say, higher levels of education and the technological means to do that is just not available. And so having a phone and, expressing your art through that is something that I think it's a good thing. Okay, number two. Oh boy, they're really jumping into this one. What does Poland's response to Russian drone incursions say about NATO and European security today? Oh boy. Well, this is a tough one. Because NATO's been this symbolic bully, pretty much run by the West and so forth. And under the conditions of that organization when it was founded, they're supposed to protect countries, sovereign countries, of getting attacked. So the reaction is they have to defend Poland, obviously. But we're at a different time when chess is played different. The games of Risk are played different. We're in a time of, where you're cheating at chess. You're stealing the monopoly homes from your competitor when he turns his back around. You're counting the cards. And so, maybe it sounded good on paper when NATO was formed, but its significance and its meaning is different today. And the question is what is the relationship between Poland and the U.S. And we already know our situation with Russia. Uh, this is certainly a taunting. I think Russia wants to see how much it can push NATO to the limits. Uh, I mean, which is basically what's going on in the world right now. But I won't go too much into it because this is it's a slippery slope, so to speak. This you could easily go down different paths on this. I'm gonna move on. Now, if it asks me about Cold War movies, I can talk about that. Let's see, number three. Do you think nostalgia for the 1980s and 90s is really about culture or about longing for stability? Um, that's actually a good question. Um, I think more or less. Okay, there's the group of us that look back on it for sentimental reasons. Now, those sentimental reasons have to do with the fact that we miss those times. Maybe we were kids growing up, we were teens. We associated with like our first romance or our first car, graduating, going to school the first day. Um, so we're nostalgic. Still, we're definitely nostalgic for that because our lives have become much more complex and just jam packed on this very, abbreviated schedule from point A to point B now. I mean, where it used to take 10 years for something to flow from point A to point C or point A to point B. Now you've got 1 month, 1 day. It's so quick that, coverage of events. We're so numb with bombings and killings and murders. And, we show our grief. Literally, we show our grief for like 30 minutes and we move on. And then there's another bombing. And it just becomes so overwhelming and desensitized with this information overflow that the power of one event no longer holds the significance. So I think that's what it is. So that is going back to what we consider a simpler time. But if you actually look at history, the 80s weren't necessarily simpler times. The economy had issues. There were still struggles all across the board. I mean, there was antagonism between parties in the Middle East and other countries, and certainly destabilization of the communism empires at that time, and then the new countries joining NATO. It was certainly there's no question it was a time of turmoil, but we tend to look back on things with sort of rose colored glasses. And I will venture to say that for me, truly, yeah, the times maybe politically or economically we're not that much better off. Perhaps maybe we were worse, right? Um, but going back to that period was a time when you could go to the library and read books, and you could go see movies with the crowd, and there was just more of a human interaction, component to all of that. Uh, so yeah, so I think there is a bona fide nostalgia, and it's half of it's basis in fact, and half of it's looking from sentimental filters. Number four. Oh boy, did you send me current events? What's your take on the Kennedy Center firing its director and arts staff? What does it reveal about cultural institutions? That's no joke. Well, I'm going to sort of answer it by broadening it just beyond the Kennedy Center. I'm going to say I'm going to broaden it to include all programs of the arts that are funded to large extent by federal funds. I think Kennedy Center has a budget of 250 million. And I think a part of that comes out of the budget for the CPB, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and that was what, 2 billion. I forget what that was. I want to say 2 billion. I wasn't prepared for this question, so I don't know. I'm guessing it was 2 billion for CPB, which they've shut down recently. So what do I think about firing it? I don't know. I don't know the terms, but here's my feeling. I don't think that any of these programs and these institutions that have been funded by the government have been able to create enough of an interest in the arts such that new generations are eager about it and eager to create and eager, to become the next jazz director. I don't see that. I know that there were, there's all, they've been busing people to operas and so forth, but they're just busing them in, and they're not creating this anticipation or an interest for the arts. And I think that's basically what's happening. And in the case of the Kennedy Center, I can only assume that it's the administration that perhaps thought that the Kennedy's agenda. I don't know who's being nominated. I mean, who's getting an award? I don't know, but I can assume that it refers to something along those lines. And the question is, do federal or do institutions like this that are that derive their funding from federal funds, to what extent can their biases come into play? Because art's intrinsic. You can't say like, okay, this is Miles Davis and this is what it is. Everybody listens to Miles Davis differently. They're taking their life experience to when they're listening to his music. They come from different walks of life. Some people are turned off by him. Some people love him. Some people are obsessed. So as in terms of art, how do you run an institution like the CPB, for example, and not bring certain personal biases into it? You know. Now, if it's to a certain extent, like the administration is saying, where they're really abusing the situation and they're generating programming that is so marginalized and addresses a very small margin of the population, well, that's something to talk about. Certainly. Um, So I don't know. I don't specifically know the details of Kennedy, but that's how I feel about cultural institutions. I feel like they've missed that. They've easily missed two generations of grooming this next generation of people who want to be in the arts. It used to be where I go to lunch and I would see young people with their sketch pads. Right, because they'd be sketching during lunch and just for practice, just for practice, just to learn from their errors, to see how certain things react to paper and the color with each other. But you don't see that anymore. I mean, now, you see plenty of people on their tablets penciling in digital color, but you don't see a lot of that physicalness that was there. And then I remember seeing people walking constantly on the streets of LA, carrying their guitar case or their violin case or their trumpet case even. And you don't see it. You just don't see it. Now, I haven't done an actual analysis or research on the arts. I have no idea what the attrition rate is. I have no idea how many graduates are going into the arts, how many make it through and to the top, and then and to what sectors. Where it be music, visual, or writing, or movies, or radio. I don't have enough to know, but my guess is that because the idea of art is so much out of the discussion. And I'm talking I'm not talking people in the cosmopolitan areas. I'm talking someone, small towns, rural towns. Uh, it's getting them interested. Getting them through Electric Company and Sesame Street, and uh, learning about Bach, learning about French cuisine. I think the first time I learned about French crepes, was through Bert and Ernie. You know, so and kids are very impressionable in that time, and I think even Mr. Rogers was talking about filmmaking on throughout his whole season. You know, his little projector, and he teach about winding the sprockets, and here's the music. So a lot of that's just gone. So I think that if it's taught, or somehow if you know, if it's taught by the family, if it's taught by institutions more and encouraged more, then you might find a more balanced situation at these art institutions. Yeah, that was a word salad I just said. Number 5, do memes function as a new kind of folk art, shaping identity and humor across borders? I don't know what that memes. Oh, I get it. Well, I mean, no, it's not folk art memes. No, no. I mean, I would say the memes are equivalent of what you used to see, you know, like, I mean, in every major city, you used to see, you know, these little stickers on the sidewalk when you walk, or you look down, or you'd see them on the telephone booth, or you'd see it on the light posts. And that's what memes are sort of now. That's what, you know, just take, they just, instead of physical, they just taken they just, no, you know, they've taken the digital arena, so to speak. And some of that too was that I think we create, I think in the days of like posting, I think they used to call them bills. It was, you remember the post the walls used to always say like post no bills. So they called those things bills. But I remember that you know, there were iconic people and situations created out of that. I want to say like Andy Warhol, because his image was always out there and posted all across as a meme. I couldn't tell you what else, but I'm just saying that this is not something new. It's not like, oh, this meme is a new way to tell my story. You know, it's been there already. It's been there. Well, oh my God, I'm gonna have to skip through these. How do you see the 1992 LA unrest reflected in current social debates? Okay, next. With OPEC plus boosting oil output amid sanctions, what's the balance between energy security and climate goals? Well, I mean that's not just about OPEC. It's the central existential question for all of us, is that, you know, how much can we afford to survive as human beings when we're so industrialized and we don't care? We're doing nothing about well, you can't reverse industrialization. uh you can only stop, and you can't even stop the bleeding, but you can maintain the severity of that. But as long as there's a need for it, people aren't going to care how you get it. And the thing is that we live a lot of luxuries in life that average people in, I would say, most of the world don't have. You know, like luxury of having lighting and electricity 24/7. You know, my gosh, God forbid if our phone goes blank for 4 hours and there's a blackout on the network. Um, television. Although I hear that television consumption is less because now there's just so many other alternative displays we're facing with. You've got like the Amazon Echo, you have your tablets and the new tablets coming out. You've got your phones, which are basically high tech computers now, especially the iPhone and the Droid. Um, you know, so but my point is that the waste and the carbon footprints being left by creating all these phones, driving leisurely, eating. There's so much wasted food, and the carbon footprint that's left from that is horrific. And the draining of waste and toxic waste into waters surrounding us on all sides. So that's the existential question. So OPEC, obviously OPEC realizes it's finite. They're counting on oil never going out of style. That's what they want. And I don't think, well, certainly not the current administration. We're not moving in a direction where we're going to go push the green as much as we can. I think, if anything, they're going to, the idea, it's not really one of isolationism, but the idea is that, to frack and to create, fossil fuels here under our natural resources, and then not have to rely on the Middle East on these deals that are, they're double-handed back end deals, and they're selling out the people for the most part. And who knows what they're trading? Like, who knows why there's such a contention going on in that, the region of Russia, with the pipelines and all of, going that. Um, so, you know, um, I think the U.S. doesn't want to have to engage with these characters as much as possible. And originally, there might have been the idea that, come World War II, that the U.S. had to be the protector and the security for the world. But we're in a different world now. And what is the U.S. going to secure? I mean, we see it standing by on certain situations. I think Qatar was bombed. Qatar was bombed Israel. And they have an alliance with the U.S. So I think that's the existential thing, is how do we control our consumption? How do we reduce it? Less soda, less candy. Um, Believe it or not, movies consume a lot and they waste. Even I was working in the movie theater in the '90s, and even then there was waste. We would just like, but we had conscious managers, though. They would like, please make sure you don't put the dozen hot dogs out 1 hour before we close, because we're never going to sell them, and by law we have to put them in the trash. I said, you kidding me? You can't just give this away? I said, no. And then literally every night we'd have to like throw away these hot dogs, throw away all the nacho cheese from the nachos. Um, the soda was whatever, that was the, but then tons and tons and tons of tubs of popcorn was just thrown out, and the energy going into all of that, the electricity, uh I mean, not to mention how it originated, like making the corn, making the popping corn, the farmers, the agriculture, the water, all of that. So, and it's just thrown out the door, thrown out the window. It's there's just so much waste. So yeah, I don't. I think with OPEC, increasing the oil output, I think the idea is they're going to try to make alliances with other countries, buy their oil cheap, like India, obviously, namely India, and buy their oil cheap, and then that puts them in a position where the U.S.'s threats, you know, they're not dangling the carrot anymore when when the oil gets boosted. So that's my take on that, but I'm not a political commentator. I'm just I don't know. I don't even read the newspaper. So okay, number 8. Gosh, number 8. We'll get through these. And we're just gonna get through these, and then when I get tired, then we'll stop. So let me see, and I just thought, okay, so number 8. Should museums return cultural artifacts like the Elgin marbles or Benin bronzes? I don't know what this means exactly, but I'm guessing that they were stolen. This is what happens in situations. Regimes take over a country, try to erase their evidence of what their contributions were in history. So paintings will get defaced. You see, like the Sphinx, I think they blew off the nose with the cannon. And I know that after Iraq, was liberated in Mosul. Was it Mosul? They were tearing down the well, not liberate, not liberate, I should say. When ISIS came in, they they were tearing down their sculptures, and the sculptures were thousands of years old. So. Uh, and then they were saying like where is this going to end up, because where it ends up, everyone knows what it is. They know what it is, just like when you steal paintings, like you can only sell through the black market because everybody knows what it is. You're not going to go to an art gallery. So but there's been these shady museums where they're trading stuff under the radar, and they're getting these artifacts illegally. um and that's sort of a story in itself, this whole shady world of artifact trading. And a lot of it is organizational crime, but it's extremely lucrative because insurance covers artifacts, right? It's a good investment. And most of all, it's a way to launder money. So I can assume these, and I mean, if anyone listening, they'll probably think I'm an idiot now, not knowing what the Elgin marbles or Benin bronzes are. I don't know. But I can assume they were stolen. Uh, and so my feeling is like they're saying return it, but like return it to who? If obviously if it's an artifact, well, that culture, that civilization is no longer in existence. So do you return it to the government, uh you know to the ruling party now? Are these artifacts, how do you know they're going to accept them? I mean, from an ideological standpoint. So you know but do I believe that things should be returned to their rightful owners in each country? No, because I think the power of museums is that, first of all, they'll protect it. And I don't know which museums they're talking about that have this stuff, but if you're talking any museum that's a real organization, they're going to protect it, they're going to promote it, they're going to educate about it. It couldn't it's sort of like the situation of like the film archives, like the UCLA Film Archive, or the Academy Film Archive, like where they're just taking all these lost homeless movies, orphan movies, and but they're preserving them. At least they're in a vault, they're there. uh they've classified them. It's the right home. So I think that's the same situation like with these artifacts. Okay. Oh boy. When does it get to? Is there like one music question? Like, do I like the Eagles? This is boy, this is nuts. Okay, number 9. Do you think book bans in US schools reveal fear of knowledge or shifting cultural power? Book bans. Well, no. I mean, it's neither fear of knowledge, shifting culture power. Well, I mean, it's part of that, but no, more or less is. And I don't know. People seem to assume like, oh, the school is almighty. Oh, it's this, and people think like there's this room of like 50 scientists and researchers, and they're saying, we're going to pick this textbook and you're going to teach this and this here. But what they don't realize is in a lot of cases, like these school districts and even the state department, it's like one or two people saying, hey, this is the book I chose. This is the one I chose. And then you can even take it a step further, is that a lot of these courses like history and some of the sciences, the texts being taught are written by the instructor. And, so I don't know what kind of objective education you can get when something is sort of disequilibriized like that. So when they're banning books, I think the banning of the books is strictly related to whatever the administration's agenda is at the time. Now, are we heading towards Orwellian territory? Yeah, but I mean, we've been that way already. Just whether we're beginning to acknowledge it if we haven't already. But it's been here. It's been here already. Uh, so I just think the book ban is just you know it's it's a pure political move, I believe. And I believe anything that's been written in history deserves to be read, just like any movie, any music piece. uh do I think that there should be a context put into place. Like for example, like Wagner's opera, context, the fact that he was anti-Semitic. I think it helps for sure. Um, Birth of a Nation. I think it helps to put that into context because it's written off as a movie because it's racist, but you have to put in perspective. Like Griffith's family, like first of all, when Birth of a Nation was made, it had only been like 50 years since the Civil War. Like it was that soon. That's like sort of like us and not even Vietnam. It's like us in the 70s now. Like yeah. Um, so people don't have a context and they're saying, okay, it's racist, which it is. There's no question about that. But you have to consider the cultural environment at the time, uh, who was the ruling party, and what their agenda was. Now, do I think that Griffith worked for any? I mean, do I think that he was taking money from anybody? No, no. I just because a lot of that thinking, was sort of developing around that time in terms of the weaponization of art. I don't know that I don't think he went so far as to weaponize that movie and to increase the racial divide. Rather, he was depicting these events. Um, you know, and I mean, obviously, you could say that he was a racist. But like I said, the context is very necessary, and I don't think it should be banned. Okay. Oh my God, I'm gonna get through this. I've only been recording right now. That's half hour. Okay. Um, let's see. Number 10. Boy, this is what they're trying to do. AI is trying to get me in trouble, I think. What do you think about the protests in Nepal where anime imagery became a symbol of resistance? Okay, I'm gonna pass on that. Are movie theaters still vital cultural spaces or just luxuries now? Well, I mean, I never viewed a movie theater as luxury. If anything, I felt that it had always been like the poor man's entertainment. Because you gotta remember what it was like in the nickel a dime and the Nickelodeon days. Nickel got you entertainment, and if you were the last picture show house, like it was a way for the community to get together. Um, watch movies, discuss about so and so down the road, discuss about so and so getting sick. Y- it wasn't where like national news hit you 1 hour, like someone's been bombed or someone's been stabbed. It took a while for the news to travel, and so the news that you had was like your neighbor was cheating or something, or so. And to that extent, yeah, it was. They were a great cultural space. Now, that doesn't exist anymore. The movie theater, you're not bringing people together. Maybe like if it's like if it's some kind of reissue. Like I said, this is Spinal Tap, and like obviously everybody was a fan from '82 when it came out, went there. But that's a little bit different. It's not like you're bringing a culture. Like you're not bringing your neighbors. You're not. It's not like a hometown kind of thing. And I never thought it was a luxury. Never, never. Now, I guess you could say it's a luxury now because it's so expensive, but I think movie going is still cheaper than other entertainments. I mean, gaming hooks you and you're spending. I mean, the whole process of a lot of this entertainment online is it's sort of like and I wouldn't be surprised. And that's another research data a study that I have to do. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be publishing a series of research reports in journals. So I'll let you guys know when that's going because some of this, um, you know, certainly interests me. But these streaming platforms, I would be surprised if some of the Vegas scientists, researchers, and statistics directors were behind it, because the whole point of these streaming platforms, every single one, there's nothing that can say they're an exception. Their process is to keep getting money from you every hour, every week, every month, every year. Just like Vegas is with enticing things, with enticing. imagery that you like. And obviously, believe me, they know exactly what you like now. With enticing sounds. Eventually, when we get to immersive technology, then you're going to smell food and get well. The only other time I thought it was a luxury was, with those dinner theaters where you serve dinner for, and it was like $100. But still, these days, a movie for two and dinner, $100, that's not bad. So, it might have been like when the road shows were around. There were, the road shows. They would make a movie and then rent out a big hall like Carnegie Hall, and then tickets would be the equivalent of like $100. You bring your family and see the premiere. There'd be like a, I don't know, 60-piece orchestra, as opposed to like small towns that had like one pianist. And that's sort of a luxury that would be, but it's no more luxury than going to the play, going to the theater. So so if I have to answer that question, are they still vital cultural spaces? No. Are they luxuries? No. I mean, they're not luxuries. They're neither. Uh, what they served at purpose-wise, I really think they're losing their role. They're losing their identity of what their function was. And I don't know if you notice, but every time you go, if you keep going subsequently, there's these changes in the theater. If you just everything, little things here and there, psychologically, subliminally, um, that things are becoming more mechanical as it relates to the movie. Even the process of buying popcorn and candy is very mechanical, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's replaced by AI robots at some point. Um, which is scary, but it's inevitable. Should prison? How do you feel about the economic blackout consumer boycott against corporations rolling back DEI? Well, I mean, I mean, this is a political question again. Well, first of all, you got to take the current administration and then what their viewpoint is. Under Biden, the whole idea was that we needed to broaden this base of worker here, and the idea was that within that base they could grow. So you had to, like in our case for like SAG, Screen Actors Guild, um, in order to get incentives back from SAG or the state even, your cast had to be like 50%, uh 50 or 60%. It's something pretty high though. It had to be 50% of the cast had to be like over the year 60, and or female, or what they called, I forget what the term was. It's a term like progressive or something, but it incorporated, not only did it incorporate race, but it incorporated like LGBT. And I could be totally wrong on this, that they lumped it together like that. But basically, the idea was that if you hired people in these categories, then SAG would give you these incentives back. And so, um, what struggling company wouldn't, what struggling company couldn't use the funds as working capital to build up their company, uh, by hiring these people? But the problem is that, obviously, the fundamental issue that's controversial is that, a lot of companies ended up hiring people who weren't qualified versus somebody who was more qualified. So specifically, did they want did they want an airline full of white people, or were they going to mix it up with African American, Hispanic? If for some reason Asian doesn't really get covered, it gets slided over. um I don't know the census and the other research data, but they seem to lump in the Asian Pacific communities. They align them in with with just like a tier below the Caucasian. So they get neither here nor there, because I know that, like, when I obviously affirmative action has been around its thing, and I remember, I was passed up because I had to reverse affirmative action. So in other words, I still had an A minus grade, but because I was Asian. I needed to have 4.0 to actually compete against other Asians for that slot at NYU or UCLA, you know. Whereas whereas if it was me as a, with A minus grade and there was a, African American, Hispanic American uh who were graded the same, then they would get that. They would get the admission, right? And I didn't. So uh and that's hard to tell, because that's hard to tell. Like, I don't know, you can tell just from scores if someone's, and especially for schooling, you can't say someone's more competent than the other. It's you're I mean, especially when you're undergraduate, like, you don't know things that you're going to learn about life, and your brain is still developing. It's permeable, and so you're learning a lot of tools during that time. So affirmative action is difficult in that you can't, all it is that I believe it's a color cultural system that was intended to put people into the workforce, and also bring them into entrepreneurship and businesses. uh it's just that the moment they the moment that they get a law passed or regulation passed, then like an administration comes in, then they erase it, and then you have to wait another 4 years or 8 years, and then somebody else comes in and tries to go scale it back or up again. So but I don't I like I don't I like I wouldn't say like I don't know who's rolling back, honestly. I heard that Walmart is like rolling back, and I don't know that you should penalize them, because like everyone's saying, like, Walmart's this giant, and they're greedy, they're shady. And look, yeah, I mean, that's how they existed. I mean, they have existed because they've offered low prices, but they offered strong real estate and quantity, and so you had to take it versus zero, and they gave you stability because they'll keep buying from you. So I don't know that you should. So I don't even know what penalizing would be, because to make anything that's I don't know. I mean, to make anything that's persuasive, you need large numbers. And what are you going to do? A lot of these towns have a Walmart as their grocery store. You're gonna picket the only grocery store in town. Um, you know, what I think is a better solution is, I'd like, it'd be great if there were more funding for minority organizations. I'd like to see sort of this conglomerate of institutions for, like, the Hispanic Americans and the African Americans and the Asian Americans, something like that, as opposed to blanketly mandating DEI to these these companies, and them using the funds and not really venting, and they're just sort of spreading it out and making it even playing field racial wise. But I don't know, like I said, it's potentially I mean, it's always, the argument at hand is that it's been a skill issue. So I gotta get through this list. If I say pass, that means it's a political question, and then other ones I'm just gonna answer with like one word. I'll get through this list. Wow. Okay, should prisons incorporate art programs as rehabilitation, or is that misplaced priority? Yes, I agree that there should be. What's your perspective on the U.S. declare? Oh, no, 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 no. Okay, do you think the superhero blockbuster era is finally ending? No, no, they'll never be that. I'd like to see it end, because what it'll do potentially is that it'll open up funding for more meaningful movies. I'm not saying that by and large a superhero movie isn't meaningful. I just think that it's first of all, it's highly addictive for children, with the amount of overload visual data that you know a child's brain interprets, or a teen's brain interprets. I mean, it encourages ADD, first of all. But I think the larger thing at hand is that it's excessive. and it's a waste of a carbon footprint. I mean, when you're spending 600, $700 million on a movie, and ultimately for what? You're spending 700 for a movie, and ultimately ends up on a hard drive. Literally, you're spending this much money on a movie for it to end up on a hard drive that you could distribute with. But it's a waste. The consumption. Now it's keeping people. It's keeping people in work, which is fantastic. But I can guarantee you, proportionally wise, the workers aren't getting commensurate to what the budget is. Because what the studios are doing is they're just throwing everything on the screen and then paying the proletariats, you know, much, 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 much less. And the proletariats only have their services. I come from. I shouldn't use that word. The crew, everybody has only their services. They're not having an ownership of the movie because the studio does. I think it's extremely excessive. It's never going to happen. But I wish there was some sort of regulation, governmental. But they don't. The Anytime the government gets involved with movies, they screw it up. But I wish that there was some sort of regulation to the extent that you can't spend this much more on a movie. And you need to have these X number of international partners, uh, you know, to sort of work together in your movies. So you could get France, you get Germany or Italy. They kind of do that already, but it's a cheat. Like the James Bond and Mission Impossible movies, they'll go to like Hungary, and Hungary will give them X million of dollars to host. But it's not really emerging in the culture. It's just using it so they get the money from the Hungarian government, who's probably, who knows where that money's coming from anyway. So you're not seeing like Hungarian culture in Mission Impossible, or any of the superhero movies. And so I would think that as part of cinematic education is that there's a limit on the budgets, and then you need these international partners to work with, you know. And if you don't, then you make these movies, you make these kind of movies. If there's going to be a DEI, well, then let's do a equivalent for movies then. That there needs to be there needs to be these amount of movies as a quota based upon a book. uh you know um these incorporating some classic literature or music. uh, I mean, I know it's a pipe dream, but I think that's what the business needs. But they're too far big. They've already sold out their morality. We don't know who's secretly backing and making money off of this, but I mean, we know the theme parks are hypnotizing people to keep coming back, and it's not even their bread and butter. That's like their main business is the theme parks. They don't really I get the feeling like a lot of times they don't really care about the movies. They just care about the theme parks, but they need the movies to kind of keep that going. I mean, the whole thing about what amazes me, which they don't really tell you about either, is that a lot of the movie business, in fact, I'd say the majority of the movie business, it's not commiserate. Like, in other words, it's not quantitative. Like, it's not like here's $10 that you're spending, and you're making $12. uh it's basically like the way the government structures their annual report on financing, like the Federal Reserve and these places, where it's distorting the numbers and manipulating to fit a certain agenda, and that's what they're doing. So the studios are, they're probably claiming losses on these theme parks that are enormously making money, or they're writing off against their movies. But you know how that works. I mean, they own the property, they own the land, and they're just paying themselves. I mean, ultimately they're taking it out of the producer's pocket because the producers always have equity. But like, well, I don't know, Warner's will charge this movie like, even though Warner's owns the property, they will charge like, $50,000 a day for their studio that they own, but they will charge it against the project. If you understand what I mean, it's very incestuous like that. And so when you're in that kind of environment, then they're distorting and manipulating the numbers to make it either look good or worse, or whatever. And then so they're the ones that get that get tapped into the candy jar first with when subsidies come through for California, for example, they get their hands first. It's not us, it's giving us, it obviously gives everybody 90% of the industry here false hope. It was never meant to benefit us. You know what I mean? It's all tied in, and it's just a PR push. And who knows what was promised in exchange for the subsidies, like how, at what cost, to save California, were these subsidies secured? That's a lot of money too. I forget what the number is, but I mean, we've got homeless on the streets still. Tents all over. I mean, it's like our social programs are lacking. Our ER urgent cares are packed. They're 6-hour waits. Um, and you bring in all this money in for movies, and like, yeah, and then like who's benefiting? So and then yeah, and then the unions have their hand because they're probably instrumental in securing the deal because they need to make their books and sure all that. So um okay, what lessons can we still draw from the civil rights movement's use of culture and music? Well, I mean, it was a music that was of a struggle, a turmoil, a time of turmoil. That chapter of our history is ongoing. It's not, didn't end from the passage of the act, the Civil Rights Act. Didn't end there. It's growing, and it's growing and it's hibernating. See, that's the scary thing. It's like, it used to be maybe there would have been outward racism. I don't want to name states, but whatever state, where there was outward. But now it's become like this sleeper cell, racism, where nobody will say anything, but their actions will convey everything. And I think that racial divide's getting wider and wider, as the economy gets worse, and there's so many months you can go being unemployed before you get stuck into this situation where you're in, like, a sloth position and just doing nothing, and uh your body's just, you're just declining mentally in your body. Like, there's only so much you can stand about that. So I think the class struggle, um is very present today, uh, than ever. And what complicates stuff is the fact that we're becoming globalized, and we're trying to understand each other's culture, and we're trying to make sense of everything that we read in the news. You know, and but what's good is that some people's struggles are being heard for the first time. Like, we didn't know a lot about Africa. And Africa has this huge, it's a huge hotbed right now, as we know. I'm not going to answer this one. How's the yeah, I'm not going to answer that. Should art always provoke, or can it simply comfort people? Both. I mean, I love Office Space. That comforts me watching it. I guess it provokes me too, because it takes me back to the days of being in a cubicle, and I couldn't stand it. It doesn't provoke me to take action. No, I mean, look, art's relative. You could make art, for your little kid, for your baby. You could make a nice poem, or you could make the same poem talk about, you know kindness, or revenge. Okay, that's enough. No, I'm not gonna answer that one. Not gonna. Yeah, do you think audience are fatigued by sequels and remakes? Yeah, yes, they are. Okay, how do you interpret the Southern takeover of American culture as people migrate south? Well, I mean, I don't know who's migrating south. I think just people are migrating. Um, they're outpriced. They were working their butts off, to and only to end up with less than livable life. I mean, in LA, just to get a serviceable apartment, one bedroom or two bedroom, and you need a car and gas, right, and food. um you need easily 5 or 6 thousand a month minimum, which means and that pre-tax is 80, 90,000 a year. And you tell me what sectors are paying that. I mean, when everything's going towards AI, and everyone's eliminating jobs. I was talking about this the other day with another filmmaker, and we were talking about, like, gosh, just in the past, like, maybe 10 years. Well, movies existed for, as we know, since 1893, but the structure of the system really started like in the 20s or so forth. And then sound came in like 27. So we were talking about just how many of these jobs no longer exist. Like, you couldn't even tell somebody, like you could talk to people about it and they wouldn't even know what that job was. Like, for example, do you know what a negative cutter is? Well, then that whole job that had existed for like 100 years is gone now, because you don't need a negative cutter, because everything is being transferred from film to digital, and you're no longer going back to negative and cutting it and making prints and stuff. So that job is gone. And then this job still exists, but it's all obviously in all the digital domain. But basically the optical house who would do fades and dissolves and credits for your movie, and they'd have this camera and a light box, and they would hand sketch the words directed by or written by and the cast. And um so that's all gone too, the optical house. And then um yeah, and pretty much anything that was physical is gone. So, like, the guy who made, well, obviously Kodak made cans of films, so that's gone. But the guy who would make your sound, like, you would record sound on set using a Niagara recorder, and then you'd have it transferred to quarter-inch tape. So the magnetic tape company's out of business, right? And then when you would master and you distribute to TV and to video, VHS, and DVD, you'd have a digibeta or a D2 tape or a 1 inch or 2 inch. So a lot of these tape companies, I don't even know what they were. That whole job, these old companies that basically used to be like, you'd have to go through, like, after you made a movie here, you would go through like 7 companies to handle your post in different forms. Because your editor, and then the laboratory, then the post house, sound mixing, and all of that is just sort of gone now. You're literally you're going from camera to YouTube is what you're doing now. It's and you're not learning the process of along the way. That's the thing. And so I don't know. So, like, if anybody that seriously wants to tell a story, I always believe that something like film, which works on so many different sensors, right? It works on a visual level. It works on prose, writing level. It works on a visual level, audio, surround sound. It even works on an immersive level, because you walk to a theater and you smell the popcorn, right? So, so a lot of that process is gone now as a filmmaker. So does it make you less disciplined now as a filmmaker because you don't know those processes? Well, I don't know. That's debatable. It's debatable. But did it make the process of making a film more rewarding? Yeah, for sure. Because I was delighted when I'd be able to see dailies of my movie in the screening room, like 35 millimeter. And I was delighted when I was able to get the audio mag tracks put together, and you know, tell the negative cutter what to cut, which scenes, and then making the first print and looking at the print and then saying, can you dial up the reds and blues? Um, so that process is gone. And that represented, I don't know how many jobs historically over the years, but it was, it was, it was, it was, I mean, you're looking at post, like, and then like other stuff like departments have sort of gone like I've noticed lately like you don't really see a lot of people production designing, and that usually was a star role. I mean, design this Hitchcock movie, it was being a star, or to be this costumer like Edith Head. These people were stars, and so that all that's sort of just like gone now. And because that's the way the world is. The world needs to move quickly for survival. um you can see that going on, with all of these land grabs and hostilities going on. uh Okay, well, Southern takeover of cultures, of the American culture. I mean, there's no Southern takeover. It's just people are migrating. They're migrating all places because it's expensive here. So, and as I explained, half the sectors of jobs in the film industry just don't exist anymore. And whatever does exist, they're making 10% of of what they used to get on larger movies, or when movies were budget, when movies were movies and had budgets. So they're just moving, but the problem is, in doing so, as we all know, is that they're increasing the property values in other places. And you know, uh, I always believe that cities should be governed by their local, by local ordinances. I think the state and cities, know their constituents the most. Like, I don't know that the federal needs to mandate and say, look, you have to do this, you can't use this, you can't, I believe try to give as much to the state as possible. So what I'm not sure about is, when you're taking somebody like, let's say, from the LA culture, and I'm not saying that because I'm an LA guy, I'm not saying like we are self-entitled, but I think you get the idea. So, and let's say they do go to, like, let's say, Colorado, or they go to, Louisiana, or they go to, even go to, like, even like Georgia, right? Uh, how does that synergize work? And the problem is that, well, first of all, I don't know what sectors of people from California are moving out there, but obviously we know that the film people migrated a long time ago. But I don't know if it's like doctors that are moving out of state because the medical system is such a mess in California. So I couldn't tell you if it's, well, I know tech people have got laid off, so tech people are moving probably close to, Midwest, South, and so forth. So the question is, it's going to be that, how are the cultures going to synergize and interact with each other? Because don't forget, a lot of the Silicon Valley jobs were immigrants brought in for the specific purpose of filling these jobs in the tech sector, like with Google, or any dot com. So, you know, what's great from what I can see is that, Indians are able to assimilate very well. They know the language. There's some of the British. It was an uneasy relationship, but some of that is still there. So there's an eloquence to when they speak. Um, their business and trading practices are pretty much here. It's nothing like, okay, this is not how we do it. So I guess, I mean, so that's the main thing, is how this migration and where it's going to go. But the problem is, what happens, like, is California ever going to drop its property values substantially? No, it's not going to. Even if people migrate out of here, it's not going to. They're not, they're not. And that's what the desperate move is, to try to bring people back to the state. Um, but I don't know how you sell them on the state, because what's the industry you bring them in? You just have .com and movies, although as a blue state, it has the most, what do you call it? What do you call it? The college. So the college constituents for the election. So California's, I mean that's something to reckon with. But the redistricting and gerrymandering. So let's see how that all turns out and so forth. Okay. Do you believe history repeats itself, or does each era stand its own? That's a long thing. We'll talk about that next time. What's your reaction to the global coral bleaching crisis that's affecting reefs worldwide? Well, that goes hand. Here's a question. What's your reaction to the global coral bleaching crisis that's affecting reefs worldwide? So what's happening is that the algae and also the coral, they're sort of morphosizing into danger because of the overheating of the world. So they're creating a lot of toxins, and they're changing colors and reacting to a lot of the industrialization, the waste, toxic waste, and the industrial waste that's being flowed through our waters, and it's affecting the algae. And then in turn the algae is growing at such a fast pace, and it's obviously discolored now, and as it grows it's creating this layer, and it's blocking the rays of the sun, the healthy rays, from nourishing the life that's underneath, all the way down from like fish down to like bottom feeders, right? So all of a sudden we're losing a lot of our life in these areas as a result. So this is the goal. I mean, but we already know this. We know what the situation is. How do we curb industrialization? How do we? But we have. How do we curb our consumption? That's all that this is about. Can we? Can we all agree to eat a salad with some chicken each day and some beets? Do we agree to that? I'm not going to answer this next one. How should wealthy nations be held accountable for broken climate pledges made? So, well, that's not going to happen. Okay. Do you think true crime podcasts and documentaries are healthy obsessions or culture or addictions? Um, well, I'll tell you, it's an obsession. Is it healthy? I don't think that any obsession is healthy. But one thing that came out of these podcasts and documentaries is that you have this whole generation of so-called amateur crime sleuths that are internet sleuths, and they're actually solving crime. It's amazing, and they team up together, and there's like this great network of all of these crime sleuths online, and I read it because I actually am obsessed with certain cases. So what's great is you're having that, and it's actually helping the overworked police forces and detectives in these situations. And it keeps people transparent too, because um, these are sleuths that are they're accessing public records, which everybody could, but there's such ease in accessing public data now that it's keeping the authorities sort of in check. Like, why are you dropping the ball on this, or why are you not following this person who's a suspect? So I like that, and it's created this new genre of people that this new community. I say genre, this new community of people that exist for crime, and they hypothesize, and they and I belong to these groups, and they approach it from different areas of data. Obviously not a lot of the people approach it from a point of view of emotion, which I get it, because a lot of these crimes appear, and what follows appear to be situations of injustice. But then there's a lot of people that are analyzing it analytically from a law standpoint, and also from a forensic standpoint, and figuring if it's realistic or it's not. So that's my question. That's my answer to that one. And I'm gonna do like two more, and then I'm getting out of here. Barbieheimer, not gonna talk about that. That's for Jessica. Should art be treated as a public good? No, no, I'm not talking about Jackie Robinson Day symbolism. Yeah, I agree with that. If you could live inside one historical moment for a week, which would it be and why? Uh, that's going to be tough because I would select a war for that. And so that involves more lengthier conversation. Aid cuts to global health. Nope. Uh, Celebrity activism is still powerful or more performative now? Okay, yeah, here. Do you see celebrity activism is still powerful or more performative now? Yeah, I think, well, I don't know. The moment that politics alienated a lot of the film going community, that's when the celebrity um, and his role, his or her role became, you know, not what it was. But I never understood why are we listening to what so and so says. You know what I mean? Like who made a celebrity to be the mediator or to be the judge about morality and in politics and in existence? Like who made a celebrity like that and why? You know what I mean? So I think the idea is that celebrities can get enough people looking. And yeah, you can, but believe me, we're at a time now where social bloggers can equally get, if not more people to look at a cause than a celebrity. So, and I'm from that world too, but I'm just saying I don't think politics is a place for where entertainment should be. And the moment you keep weaponizing a product or a tool like a movie and you weaponize it or you weaponize it like a book too, I really think you're going into dangerous territory. Do you think nostalgia retro culture? Da, 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 no. How do you see international cinema shaping American audiences today? Well, it doesn't. What food or meal instantly brings back personal memory? Okay, what food or meal instantly brings back vivid personal memories for you? The TV dinner. Because I was so fortunate to grow up when it was in the aluminum tray. The chicken tasted good. I kid you not. Now you have it now, and it's like it's mutated chicken. It's the vegetables are worse than canned. But I had it when it was like it was the real thing, and you could sit around and watch the game show like Joker's Wild or Tic Tac Toe, and talk to the family. Everybody sat around the tube. There was a remote control, a clicker we called it, and um, that was fun. And then you talk about it. You talk about whatever the show was or what the question was. And that's another thing is that the moment that quiz shows became out of left prime time or right after the evening news, so to speak, or even before. Um, I don't know. I just feel like we lost the power of what the media was. And so then the media is now struggling for whatever it can just to do this. And it's selling people out and it's weaponizing people against each other because it knows very well that it's going to get views if you weaponize. Like I always tell people this, like in the early days of Yelp, you could have 20 positive reviews, but people would only read the one bad review and say, I'm not going to that restaurant. And I don't know when this came into the public consciousness, but when did we start to believe negativity more than what the truth is? Like, what I mean? Like, it's so easy to ruin anybody right now, and people will believe it. And then obviously, he's innocent or she's innocent or whatever, or they're innocent. When did that happen consciously? That Yeah, I distinctly remember tracking like Yelp in the early days and noticing like it was, there was far more support just for the couple of negative reviews than there were for the numerous positives. And I don't know why in our life we're led to the fact now all of a sudden that we should doubt the positive. You say this is a good guy. Well, I don't believe it. I think he's the bad guy. Does that have to do with our reflection on society and we now think that we're sort of like the animal kingdom where everyone's susceptible to betrayal and murder? and we're taking this sort of pessimistic, nihilistic view now of society. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Is it a lack of foundation in our, in our city, whether it be good, strong social groups or religion or whatever? We don't have that, and so it's easy for us to attack something. And I have to admit, I've done it too. I'll just like attack somebody on whatever, on what platform, and I think people get a gratification. It's this sort of secret gratification that you could do. It's like the what do you call it? It's like the Gulliver's Travels idea, where you can be you can be on the offensive, which is easy. Like you could shoot a rocket or you could do that. But being on the defensive is much harder. So you remember there's a scene in the Dave Fleischer animated one where you've got like 60 little people all around him, and he can't capture them because one is here in this nook and cranny, one is here, and one is here, and one is here. So I think it's this idea that we like to jab people secretly, and we get off on it. um, and so if anything that developed from the social media that was a major negative, which and I mean existential negative, because people commit suicide over uh, social media. I mean, they have. It's easy to be bullied and commit suicide, and especially for someone who's got no foundation, no context of anything. And I'm surprised, by the way, what they're teaching in school. By the way, the textbooks are so out of reference. So far, the bar is pushed so far on what these textbooks are that there's not a lot of objectivity anymore. Even math is politicized. We know science will always be politicized because it's an existential thing. It's an ideological thing, right? But who could ever think that math could be weaponized? So um, I was hoping that's on something positive. Well, I guess I could turn this one to this final question. What's something you've changed your mind about in the past 10 years? Well, I believe it or not, I'm actually glad that people are able to take a step back and see what is purely an illusion or what's being a manipulation for someone's agenda. I like that people can see that and they're able to make informative decisions for their life now. And that could have only happened because of social media during the 10 years, the past 10 years, the ability to access data on anything now and make an educated guess. Now, is a lot of the data skewed? Yeah, absolutely it's skewed. But it's not like you're going to a library and you're sourcing stuff from 1960. I just like the fact that people can make educated choices and know, because people know when they read something if they're being manipulated or not. You could totally tell because each side is trying so hard to prove themselves that it's clear that they're overdoing it. Like there's insane overacting on both sides, both parties, and and we're still, I mean, we're still two party. I mean, I think the middle ground is shrinking, and it's, maybe it's evenly going up to both sides, but that's not the question actually. So anyway, yeah. So on that note, it is hopeful, and I encourage everybody to read. No one, and you all know when TikTok is lying to you, it's going to be harder coming up with AI to see what's real and what's not. Um, but we know for sure. As long as we're human, we know when we're being played. So on that note, take care, everybody.